All right, so recording has started. This is the December 2nd meeting of the Design and Project Review Committee. We do have a quorum. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to allow participation electronically or by telephone.
Second.
Okay, Michael, please call the roll.
Nyden.
Aye.
Curtis.
Aye.
Higgs.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Eckersberg. Tristan.
Aye.
Heinck.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye. Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
And Sterling.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, Michael, please call the roll.
Nyden.
Aye.
Curtis.
Aye.
Biggs.
Aye.
Cano.
Yes.
Eckersberg. Tristan.
Aye.
Heinck.
Abstain.
Jensen.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Sterling. Sterling.
Aye.
Okay. All right, first item, 2648 Sheridan Road. Darian Halligan, applicant, submits for major zoning variation to construct a circular driveway on Sheridan Road, where circular driveways are only permitted on lots with frontage along Ridge Avenue and Crawford Avenue, and to cover 38.25% of the front yard with a circular driveway where 30% of the maximum amount is the maximum amount permitted in the R1 single family residential district. ZBA is the determining body. So I see the applicant is on. Would you like to walk us through the proposal?
Yeah, that would be great. Can I share my screen?
That's fine. We have our packet prepared, but that's fine. That's fine. You can share your screen.
Okay. All right. I thought I would just kind of create a PowerPoint. It's real quick. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our proposal. I also have with me, I'm Darian Halligan, I'm the owner. I also have with me Cliff Town, who's our architect, is on the meeting, Alex Weissman, who is my developer, and then David Meek, who is my attorney. So after we got finished answering all of the questions, what we saw was that there were common themes and reasons why the half circle drive really worked best. And in this context, I'd like everyone to remember that this is a single family home with an accessory dwelling unit. So there are two middle-aged residents, two elderly, one is 71, the other one is 81, and then two young children of 5 and 2 years old. And the common themes were really that the half circle drive allowed for increased safety for the children and for the two mothers, increased safety for the Evanston residences. The half circle driveway allowed for the ADU housing elderly requires, when you have an ADU and you have limited space that we have on this property, you really need to have a creative traffic flow design. And that's what the half circle allows us to do. It also turned out that it looked the best, which is a little added bonus. Also, this was the safest access for delivery vehicles and also for guest parking. And here I've listed some hardships, which I'll go over in detail. So here are the hardships that we've identified. First off, the addition of an ADU results in more drivers than a typical single family home. I'm a driver, my wife's a driver. We have both parents are drivers. And then we plan to be here for a very, very long time. And so I anticipate at one point in time, both the kids, maybe even a third child also being drivers. Also with having an ADU, this particular purpose is that we have to consider what makes sense for the elderly. I'll go into more detail about the current garage, but the current garage that sits here is really problematic for a lot of different reasons, and I'll go into some reasons for that a little bit later. Another thing is that the Hennessy's were granted this variance a couple of years ago. They're the property just to the north. Well, we have a tremendous amount of less space than they did to create their half circle drive, and that created some problems with the design of this. In addition, especially due to the bike lane, when the Hennessy's were granted the variation, there was no bike lane, and so there was actually a full median in the center of Sheridan Road, which allowed for cars to sit and hang out or delivery vehicles to sit and hang out. Because there is now a bike lane there, that median in the center no longer exists. And in the Zoning Boards of Appeals meeting in 2017, Alderman Ravel recognized that even back then, that there were similarities with Crawford and Ridge Road. And now with the bike lane, there's even more similarities that Sheridan has with Ridge and Crawford. And of course, if you remember, we're right across the street from a heavily trafficked park. So there's a lot of persons that are turning into that park, and of course, there's no parking on Sheridan Road. All right, so the first obvious question is, why not use the alley? Well, the alley's challenging for a lot of different reasons. First off, I have two elderly that are gonna be living with us, and in the dead of winter, walking outside 100 feet to the alley is just really difficult. Hard for all of us, especially hard for them. As importantly, the alley is unpaved and does not drain well at all. And what happens is that every time it rains, there is water that just sits in that alley almost the entire length of the alley. And in talking to the majority of the residences that use that alley, all of them have said that, that water sits there, builds up an ice, and it's really an ice skating rink in the winter. And then also, I want to draw your attention to the lot. I've got a picture of it up here. And you notice that the lot mimics the design of the alley. But my garage is kind of square, north, south, east, west. Well, when you're looking at the alley, because of the design of the alley, my garage almost kind of sticks out a little bit inside of the alley. And what happens because of that is that the easiest access out of the garage is to the north. it's extremely difficult to turn a car to the left coming out of the garage, or if you're backing up to do that left-hand turn and then go north because of where that garage is situated. I don't have an offset where all of the other garages on that alley, they have a 2, 3, 4 foot offset, which allows them more maneuverability. In addition to that, my neighbor on the other side of the alley, so on the west side of the alley, he's got a whole fence there. I don't, and in comparison to everybody else in the alley, I have, because of that fence and because I don't have an offset in my garage, I have the least amount of width to navigate a car in and out of that. Oh, whoops, sorry. I don't know what happened there. So because of that, you know, I'm limited to where I can really exit. So I can really just exit to the north or maybe enter in from the north side. And that's also the long way. You know, I'm very close to Center Street. The other one is Ingleside. I have to try to traverse the entire alley to get there. There's often trucks there, delivery trucks, there's garbage trucks. So it's really a difficult alley to navigate. And I really feel for, especially for my family, that it's not a matter of if an accident will happen, but really a matter of when. So the other obvious question is, why not use a hammerhead? So we designed this multiple different ways, and really the designs came out really an exit on the north side or exit on the south side. In all of these plans, it created an environment where you had tight multi-point movements, which would be considerably more difficult to execute while requiring more turns while backing in order to face forward into Sheridan. The hammerhead design is also more hazardous because of the multi-point turns that you would have to do. It's just more hazardous for the elderly and for visitors. And for delivery trucks and so on and so forth. We couldn't do a hammerhead to the north because there's the Hennessy's there. And what made most sense was a hammerhead with an exit to the south side, because that gave the biggest amount of space in order to turn the cars into the garage. And with that plan, the percentage of space for the driveway needed in comparison to the offset actually exceeded more than 50%, which was more than the 38% that we're proposing now. Other issues with the hammerhead is that if we did the hammerhead to the north, the cars would have to back out this way, and we anticipate the kids kind of running out of the front yard, and we didn't want anybody kind of backing up into where they'd have to load the kids and the kids would have to cross the driveway. And we really thought that that was problematic. And, you know, last but not least, all of these options were considerably less pleasing than the half circle. So all of this adds unnecessary complications because the workflow really of the half circle is the best. And here's what that workflow is. I don't know if you can see my.
Mr. Halligan, can you wrap it up? Because we do have other agenda items, and I'll give you like 2 more minutes. Then I know I have staff that has questions.
Yeah, I've got just this last slide. So really the hammerhead is really the best. I mean, the half circle is the best because of the workflow. And the workflow is that the grandmother drives straight back from the garage, pulls up to the front, loads the kids on the passenger side so they don't have to cross the street, and then exits Sheridan Road to the front. We don't have to navigate a challenging garage. There's never any reason to back out into Sheridan. It's the best design for a multi-family vehicle workflow due to the ADU. This is the least amount of surface area. So, you know, we're not looking to do something where you have to create something where you have to be a perfect driver. We don't want to create that scenario. We do have all the support of the neighbors on my block, and it's the most pleasing design. On a separate note, the Finkel property had a 20-foot curb cut, and we're just asking for two 12-foot cuts. So there's not that much difference. And then this is really, we anticipate this being a dedicated entry by the garage because of just how people view garages. So we anticipate that everyone's going to enter in on the south side, on the north side, and then exit on the south side. And then last, the circular drive really promotes the continued use of the ADU for the elderly, which supports the city policy objectives, which is why the city voted for the ADU. That's it.
All right, staff, any questions?
Just a comment.
Sure.
So I understand that this proposal is part of your addition application.
Yes.
If this is approved, a separate right-of-way permit would still be needed for the work in the parkway. So just so you're aware of that. And currently there is a moratorium on any excavation in the parkway until after March 1st.
Okay.
So just be aware of those points.
Great. Thank you so much.
I noticed on the drawing that there is, it's indicated that the driveway would be heated. Could you explain that a little bit more? Like what technology would be used or how that would be achieved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a copious shoveler right now. I live in the city of Chicago and I'm always shoveling my alley. And so I kind of hate shoveling. So there's two technologies that we're looking at. We're looking at an electric technology, which would just do the kind of front, the front area in front of the garage, and then tire tracks on kind of half the driveway. And then I'm going to be comparing that against a kind of boiler technology, which uses kind of like an antifreeze material, which would allow me to cover more of the front driveway at a much less cost to operate.
Okay, so do either of those require changes in the electric service? I mean, I know you're doing a renovation here, so you're probably, I mean, would that impact the electric service that you're building into this project?
Yeah, no, it will not, because the garage and ADU is going to have a separate electric service than the existing property.
Okay. And then my last question on this is, it sounds like all of those, both of the options that you provided they're within pavement, or are they're not? How are they integrated into the actual material, pavement material?
Oh, that's a question I'm not sure, but I believe that they lay underneath the driveway, if that makes sense.
They both integrated in the pavement.
Oh, sorry. Alex would know best. He's my
Yeah.
developer.
Most of the ways.
And then are
integrated
these
in the pavement.
will these structures are you proposing to put these into the parkway area too? Or just on private property?
Just on the private property.
So you're still gonna have to shovel.
Yes, I am. I know it's still going to be a thing. My wife says I love it. Maybe it's my 20 minutes of solace and peace in the middle of the winter.
So you talk
All right,
a
other
lot.
staff questions?
Oh, yeah, sorry. You talk a lot about using the front drive and why it's so important, elderly and kids and everything, but it also looks like you have a parking pad in the back that's 20 by 20, and you have an existing garage, whether you consider it to be easy to access or not. That is a lot of parking.
So my existing garage, I don't really plan on using it as a garage. I plan on using that as a workshop. One I don't know if you notice right now, but I'm actually literally in a closet. It's my only kind of personal space in my home right now. I am literally in a closet. I mean, these are my walls. And I'm an avid, my wife and I are avid gardeners. So we anticipate using that existing garage for a workshop and a place for all of the stuff that we have to do all of our gardening. The parking pad, I put that there because I don't know if I necessarily need it, but just in case I do have overflow, I wanted to be respectful of the aesthetics on Sheridan and have a place for visitors to park, so I don't have a bunch of cars out in front of the driveway.
While I understand all your reasoning, if you do change your mind and you end up using the existing garage as an actual garage, which is what its intended purpose really is, not as a dedicated shed for you, and the 20 by 20 parking pad, and the very large heated driveway that is taking up the majority of your front yard, that is a lot of space that is hardened in the yard for the sole purpose of storing cars.
Sure, I understand that, but I'm not going to change my mind. I've thought a lot about my needs for my family, and I'd like you to also remember. I mean, this is really a multi-family. Now because I have the ADU, this is a multi-family residence. This is my family, and this is the residence of the ADU family. You know, at one point in time, I could have 1, 2, 3, 4. I could have 7 different drivers. I don't know if I'll get to that point, but I'm not going to be changing my mind to use the existing garage as another place to store vehicles.
I have a few questions. Or Laura, do you want to respond?
I guess I'll just finish with this statement that you made a pretty impassioned discussion about how the alley is basically unusable for you. But then you go ahead and put a parking pad off the alley suitable for at least 2 cars. It really weakens your argument that you must absolutely, for safety reasons, have this circular driveway.
Well, again, it's just really for overflow. That's really all it's for, if and when that is needed.
It's most like a guest parking.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people who have accessory dwelling units and don't have space for this many cars. My guess is that you could easily, without the parking pad, store 7 cars because your front yard driveway proposal is actually quite large. I'd be more inclined to support it if the driveway were not so large in the front yard. It's a lot of the space.
Yeah, so we looked at also trying to reduce it to the 30%. And for the safety reasons, it just didn't work out. It actually, the drawing that we had that reduced it to 30%, it also looked extremely ridiculous, and it was impossible, almost nearly impossible to kind of make the turn without being a perfect driver. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid creating an environment where myself, my family, visitors, delivery trucks have to be perfect in their driving.
And may I add something more? With this kind of plan which we created, and obviously with a little bit more driveway as Darian wants, we still perfectly well sit under the provision of the requirements of the impervious area, which we very well under.
I'm sorry, sir. I just cannot hear you. Could you talk a little louder, please?
Yes. What I'm saying, that we're still sitting very well under the provision of the and requirements of the impervious area. So we're way under the impervious area requirements. Still with a little bit bigger front driveway.
8, I think you had some comments or questions.
Yeah, I guess the two large curb cuts, or really I think any curb cut in the right of way where there's alley access, to me, it's not an equitable use of public property. It's really exclusively dedicated to your own use and your family's use. I think these interventions, Jessica can probably speak to it more, but they create further and unnecessary conflict points with pedestrians and vehicles. I think in general, the city is trying to close curb cuts along major roadways, not increase them. I think that's probably largely because they degrade the continuity of the streetscape. In this case too, they're somewhat damaging to the integrity of setting of the adjacent properties. It's in a federal historic district. This case for my colleagues, this kind of reminds me of the Colfax case we reviewed a few weeks ago, where this property did receive zoning relief, I think a year or two ago for a curb cut. And now I think we're reviewing it again and trying to make kind of a undesirable situation a little bit better, maybe, I'm not sure. And I think in general, I've heard a lot of inconveniences and really aesthetic preferences, but I'm not certain what the hardship is. Is it the alley? I don't know what's peculiar to this property that makes compliance not possible. I have trouble believing that the conditions of the alley are so poor that you can't traverse it. And then I'm a little confused too why the addition in the ADU, why that can't be placed at the rear volume of the structure and have the necessary parking be accessed from the alley. So I guess my biggest problems with the proposal, especially as you progress to the zoning board, is that the hardship just seems self-created to me. I think there's alternatives and a lot of alternatives you could explore. I think you have a preference for this aesthetically and for your own convenience. It's a substantially sized lot and it has alley access. There's no parking requirement for the ADU. I want to point that out. You don't have to have required parking. And I agree with Laura's points about the existing garage and the proposed parking pad. It's just a lot of space for storage of vehicles. And then I guess if we do, I lean towards a negative recommendation for this. I just don't see it. But if we do lean towards approval, I think that we should reduce the size of those curb cuts. I don't see why the 30% requirement in the front yard couldn't be met. Those are my points.
All right. Mr. Meek, did you have something to add?
I agree. I'm sorry, what was that,
I don't think we
John?
can hear you. Well, I think David Meek wanted to speak, but I don't know if I think we can't hear his audio. So, well, he sorts that out. Jessica, did you have a comment?
And is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there
We can hear you now.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'd like to address some of Mr. Sterling's comments. So this property had been in this original configuration of a single zoning lot, and then it was divided, and now it's being restored into a single zoning lot. And yes, there was relief granted to provide a curb cut in the front to access the north half of the property, but that was when this was a 2-lot, 2-building site. Now it's been consolidated. So a single curb cut to serve a front-loaded garage, I think would be permissible for this property because a curb cut had been granted and the determination that was appropriate had been granted. And in fact, a front-loading curb cut had existed previously under the prior home situation. One of the concerns about reducing this below the 38% proposal is the narrowness of the curve of the driveway, or the tightness of the radius of the driveway if you try to reduce the area to 30%. So it's an 8% variance from what's allowed in this front yard area under the 35-foot setback. With respect to the hardship about the existing garage, I think what we see as being part of the hardship is especially by having an ADU, where the presumption is that you have elderly residents, then there are certain situations or circumstances from the nature of the property and its layout that tend to lead to hardship. So for example, it's more than 100 feet from the garage to the house. And especially in inclement weather, that could be difficult for elderly people. And as a building with an ADU, when this when the Halligans are no longer living here, presumably, this will be attractive as a house with ADU compatibility or accessibility. And so we'll also have be more attractive to elderly residents. He's perfectly entitled to convert his garage into a shed, or to build a different shed and keep a garage, or not have a garage at all and only have a parking pad. So I think that the fact that he has proposed or is considering a parking pad shouldn't be held against him, notwithstanding that he's looking to create something in the front. He's looking to create a situation where the turning movements are not in conflict with each other, where he's creating a situation that's best, he thinks best for elderly drivers whose responsiveness is not as quick as some of the rest of us, and whose vision may not be, as perfect, and his sense of depth might be somewhat impaired. But also he's creating space for off-street temporary guest parking, which he doesn't have on Sheridan Road. So any of the guest parking that he'd want to have would need to be provided either on site, or his guests would need to go more than a block away and then walk all the way back to the house. So that's another reason to create a situation that allows for easy guest parking. And then finally, to the point of safety considerations, that is an important feature of this. And this is a situation that allows for guaranteed front-facing exiting onto Sheridan Road. And I'll just remind you that backing onto Sheridan, especially without a median in the middle, can be challenging because you've got two-way traffic traversing here, and especially if you go north, you've got to cross southbound traffic and enter into northbound traffic to exit. That's kind of what I had to add. Thank you.
And
So-
and hold on, Cade, I can talk to you about the location of why we put it here instead of further back. I thought about further back, but right now, the current mudroom of the house is literally right here. It's right here.
You're not seeing.
And yeah, it's right in this little section right here where it's kind of in the center of the current house. That's the mudroom right now. So it made perfect sense to put this right here, just to literally attach the garage and the ADU to the current mudroom. And the mudroom becomes a vestibule and actually becomes probably the most trafficked area in the home. So that's, to put it further back, I'd have to really rework the entire workflow of the entire house. And that would just cost an astronomical amount of money that I just don't have. So so I'm not I'm not being flippant when I say that aesthetically this also happens to look the best as well. It's really kind of an all-encompassing proposal.
So I understand.
All right, so we've been doing this for about 40 minutes at this point for a driveway. So I want to take, I think Jessica wanted to speak to say something, and then if there's any more comments, then I want to put this to, and then maybe Laura, and then if there's any other comments, I want to put this to a vote and move on to the next item.
So I was just going to say that I also do not see the hardship that is created necessitating these two curb cuts. There has been mention about the nearby park. Evanston is very walkable, particularly this area. Increasing the curb cuts increases conflict points where you have people who are walking their dogs, taking their children to the park by walking there. And this is more likely to result in a crash with a car and a pedestrian by having these curb cuts here. You're talking about elderly drivers with vision impairment, and you don't want to make sure that they have to drive perfectly well. They do have to drive perfectly over these curb cuts. I also just would like to note, particularly about the hardship, I read a lot about AARP research, particularly as it relates to walking with elderly and getting to bus stops. And so the recommended distance is about a quarter mile for a bus stop walk. And we know that a lot of seniors rely on public transit to get around because they do start having vision impairment and can no longer drive. And so as far as, you know, being able to walk 100 feet, I'm just not seeing that as a hardship either. And there's actually a lot of research that shows by AARP that if a person who is a senior cannot walk a quarter mile, that their life expectancy substantially decreases to less than 5 years. And so it's really important that elderly people are walking at least a quarter mile every day. And that's all I want to add.
Committee, one thing I'd like you to consider is that we feel confident that we will get at least the one curb cut because we've already gotten the curb, because the curb cut was already granted to the other home. So really this is a comparison between a single curb cut and a double curb cut half circle drive. And when you compare those two options, and you do the actual workflow of the cars and the vehicles and figure out who's going to be walking where and who's going to be driving whom and how are those cars going to be, you know, going on to Sheridan. If you want to ensure that the car always drives forward onto Sheridan, which I think is the best way, the half circle is astoundingly easier and safer to do that. And that's why we're proposing it in comparison to a single curb cut. And that's how we're looking at it. And that's how I would like, you know, I would respectfully request that you guys look at it as well.
All right. If there's no other staff questions, I wanted to make a couple comments. Is there anyone else who had any comments or questions? Laura, you're muted.
Someone else want to speak?
Okay. I do understand what you're saying. It is better for people to drive forward onto Sheridan Road rather than back out onto Sheridan Road. But you have, whether you choose to use it this way or not, you are proposing 4 parking spaces off the alley. And what's even better than traffic entering and exiting Sheridan Road is traffic entering and exiting the alley, which is what is preferred in the city of Evanston. Now, I've heard your arguments about elderly people, but this all still seems like a preference. And I also think I've seen a lot of driveways that have pavement set up so people can make a 3-point turn and exit forward out of their driveway on places like Gulf Road and Sheridan Road. It doesn't have to be a circular driveway. So I still have concerns that you will have parking, dedicated parking space for 7 vehicles plus all of the pavement that is in the front yard. That is a lot of space devoted purely for the storage of vehicles. A lot. And when you say that you can't use the alley because it's not safe, but then you use the alley and expand the use of the alley, it's very hard for me to believe that you couldn't have people park off the alley.
All right. Any other staff comments or questions?
I would just like to say that I agree with Laura. I think the argument that you can't safely access the house from Sheridan Road for various traffic concerns is most easily resolved with no curb cut on Sheridan Road and using the alley. It reminds me so much of the Colfax case where it's, you know, I don't want our hand to be forced. I think as a committee, we have an opportunity to set a new precedent here where we don't approve curb cuts where there's viable alley access. It's just an outdated practice and it really degrades the public space that we have.
So I would echo the comments that I've heard from my colleagues as well. And I think I've expressed this for years. I have concerns that we allow curb cuts and driveways because of particular family situations. We have elderly people that reside all over Evanston that would likely appreciate a better, easier way, a preference over a front door, over a back door, or a side door, or whatever. And so I think I'm deeply concerned about the precedent that sets in terms of paving space, open space. I think the concerns about the alley being flooded are not improved by adding more impervious surface to adjacent properties. So I will not be providing a positive recommendation for this, but I do think if the Zoning Board of Appeals does decide to move forward, I would hope that you would be within the 30% lot coverage, the impervious surface percentage, in order to try to meet that, because I do think that this is a large space, and I do acknowledge that parking and delivery vehicles coming off a Sheridan Road, that does, a driveway like this does resolve that issue. But to Cade's point, I am, and Laura's, I'm concerned about the number of vehicles for this particular property that we would be making accommodations for at the expense of safety, curb cuts, other issues, and generate traffic. And then I don't know how much you reviewed the previous case where there was an approval. Correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, but I don't think DAPR recommended approval of those curb cuts at the time for that, or there at least were several of us who voted against that, because again, wanting to address the similar issues that with alley access, not having access to Sheridan Road. So if there's no more comments, somebody would like to make a motion, that would be great.
I will make a positive recommendation to ZBA.
For the purposes of voting, I will second it.
Okay, Michael, please call the roll.
Nyden,
No.
Gertis,
Aye.
Biggs,
No.
Cano,
No.
Tristan, Hike,
No.
Jensen,
No.
Jones,
No.
Sterling,
No.
Tristan. Is Mario around? Ingrid.
No. Michael, did you get me for no?
Yeah, I got you, Mario. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is Ingrid in? Is Eckersberg?
I don't see her.
Okay, all right. That was 1 positive and 8 nays.
Okay, so the item goes to ZBA. Is it this month, Cade, that it goes to ZBA?
Yeah, 2 weeks from yesterday.
Okay. So it's the I think it's the 13th, 15th.
Yeah, around.
15th.
Mhm.
All right, so this item will be at the ZBA on the 15th. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, 2922 Central Street. Thomas Ailman, applicant submits for building permit to alter the exterior facade of a 1-story commercial building, Kurt's Cafe, in the B1 Business District and Central Street Overlay District. All right, Mr. Ailman, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Thanks hopefully this one will be a little bit more straightforward than the last one. Right. So Susan Trashman, the owner of Kurt's Cafe, wants to update the space and bring a little bit more light in. We did a little bit of exploratory demo and saw that the lintel for this for the improvement on the right is actually at the same height as the adjacent steel lintel. So just to be clear, we're only talking about the part of the storefront that's on the right side. There's no change to the lighting, the canopy, or the signage. It's taking off the wood and basically removing some framing that lowered the head of the window and replacing the window that is now single pane, not insulated, with modern energy code compliant storefront glazing, new door, and a vestibule. We did talk to Walter Hallen about the vestibule and any egress issues, and he was on board with basically putting the vestibule back where it was. The one unique item is the opening windows. The permit comment that we got back was regarding insects. So the plan now is to have, we looked at screens and an air curtain, and the owner elected to go the air curtain route. So the materials I mentioned, the storefront, and then it's a limestone knee wall to match the rest of the storefront. I'd be happy to take your questions.
It appeared from looking at your drawing that you are incorporating a ramp into the entranceway so as to avoid having any physical steps that would be an ADA barrier. Is this so?
Well, right now we're not creating a new ramp. The walk between the sidewalk and the vestibule is sloped right now. It's in bad shape. We're just kind of chipping out what's kind of already starting to chip out on its own and repouring it.
But what you're putting in will now be it was before perhaps, but will now be ADA compliant?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
It's the I had one question about the storefront that it's adjacent to. It has that kind of stone banding above the storefront window. Did you consider continuing that above the new intervention here?
Well, we have not done the exterior demo. We basically removed the soffit on the inside to see that it is framed. My X-ray vision isn't working this week, so I don't know exactly what's above that. There could be limestone. Kurt's Cafe is a nonprofit that's operating on a shoestring, I think Susan would say. And so we're trying to clean things up, make it more functional. If there's limestone there, great. I agree, it would look better, but it wasn't one of Susan's priorities for this improvement.
Okay. The only other comment I had is, did you look at recessing the storefront at all to incorporate more amenity space? The sidewalk is pretty narrow there.
Well, that wasn't the brief that was given to us by the owner. The brief that was given to us by the owner was to make the storefront more energy efficient and bring more natural light in. We raised the head up quite a bit to bring natural light further back into the space. The facade of this building kind of steps back as you move east. And so you can kind of see in that perspective that the storefront that we're replacing is already stepped back. I think it's about 2 feet from the wall, from the storefront to the west of it. What you're proposing would involve losing interior space and would be a little bit more of a major change than she was hoping to accomplish. One of her goals is to have, and I mean, it's not part of my proposal, but she is interested in having outdoor seating there. Obviously, given current conditions, that's even more desirable. So the plan is to activate that space, which is possible because the storefront already steps back.
I see. Okay. My only other comment is not related to the proposal at all, but the awnings are so strange. If you could look at lowering them, they're at such an odd height on this building, but it's neither here nor there really. But
I'll mention that to her.
Any other questions or comments from staff?
So just where we're at with the permit status, are we waiting for revisions from you?
You are. It was a recent decision by Susan to go with the air curtain, and I thought that might also, the resolution of that might also be relevant to what you all are looking at, whether it's screen or just an air curtain that handles the insects. So we will make that change when we hear from you guys.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Gary, did you want to say a thing about signage?
Everything's, I think what's existing is remaining, so there's no changes to the signage, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Then no, I don't.
All right, great. Is there a motion then?
I will make a motion for approval of preliminary and final review.
I'll second.
Okay, Michael, please call the roll.
Nyden,
Aye.
Gertis,
Aye.
Biggs,
Aye.
Cano,
Yes.
Tristan,
Aye.
Hink,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Sterling.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. A couple things, housekeeping things for Dapper. Michael, do we have items for next week?
We have potentially one item. I think it's 1811 Emerson. It's an adjustment to the PD, but I'm waiting to hear back from Megan. So we may not have a meeting next week.
Yeah, they are prepared to go if we have a meeting.
Okay.
So close.
All right, so it sounds like we'll have a meeting, an adjustment to a plan development, and then we would have a meeting on the 16th as well. And then the plan would likely be to not have a meeting on the 23rd and likely not the 30th.
That seems reasonable.
Because there will be nobody around the week prior to the 30th to put a packet together.
Although I'm not sure how much traveling we're doing right before
Nobody should be
Christmas.
doing much traveling. Everyone should be hunkering down. Literally, as I said that, the New York Times news alert says, this winter will be the most difficult time in the public health history of this nation. So on that note, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you
All
all.
those in
Appreciate
favor?
it.
Aye.
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 Johanna, I got to give you a quick call after this.
Okay.